All right, welcome back to the deep dive. You know the deal. We take your sources and we try to boil them down into the most important stuff so you can get smart on a topic fast without, getting overwhelmed.
Right.
And today we're diving into something pretty specific that y'all have been asking about. It's called the MXOT approach to training, and specifically for muscle growth. So we've got a decent amount of material here, kind of outlining the MaxOT philosophy.
Yeah.
I guess the mission for today's deep dives is to really wrap our heads around what makes MaxOT tick and how it promises to deliver, serious gains in muscle and strength faster than you might expect, and maybe even bust some of the myths that are out there around training.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one of the things that jumped out at me right away, just from looking at this material, is it's like laser focused on results. It's all about maximizing your progress.
Yeah.
In the shortest possible time. I mean, they even throw out this really kind of mind-blowing comparison early on. Like, imagine gaining 10 pounds of muscle in 2 months versus taking 2 years to get there.
Wow.
So that right there, I think, sets the tone for what MaxOT is all about.
It does. And I think it actually makes sense when you think about it. The source material points out that faster progress actually leads to more enjoyment. It helps keep you motivated.
Right.
And it makes sense, right? You don't see results, you get discouraged.
Totally.
And this brings up a kind of interesting point, almost a paradox in a way. They say sometimes the more you learn about training, the less progress you might actually make.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Let's dig into that a little bit.
So what they're getting at here
Yeah.
is, it's pretty interesting, is why this whole learn more, get less thing happens. And they say it's because when you're first starting out, right, you tend to stick to the basics. Bench presses, squats, curls. You see pretty good gains at first. But as you get more experience and you start reading bodybuilding magazines,
Oh, yeah.
you start to get sidetracked. You start trying to copy all the advanced stuff, the professional bodybuilders are
All
doing.
the fancy stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
All the crazy techniques. And according to this material, that's where a lot of people go wrong. They basically argue pretty strongly that one of the biggest reasons people stall out is because they abandon those basic, highly effective exercises.
Yeah.
In favor of these kind of more complex, advanced methods.
Right.
It's almost like they're overthinking it.
Right. Yeah. They get too clever.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's interesting, too, is they kind of point to where people are getting their information.
Yeah.
And they list friends, gym trainers, bodybuilding magazines as kind of the most common places people are turning to. And the author of this material is pretty critical of the advice that's often found in magazines.
Right. And that's an important point, because those sources, might not always be giving you the best or the most evidence-based advice, especially if you're just looking to, build some solid muscle.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like a game of telephone, right?
Right.
Like somebody heard something from somebody,
Right.
and then it gets passed on. And who knows what the original message was anymore.
Exactly.
And that kind of leads to this other hurdle, which is unlearning. You have to unlearn any bad habits or beliefs that you've picked up
Right.
that might be holding you back. They even say complete beginners actually have an advantage here because they're starting with a clean slate. They can learn the right principles from the get-go.
Right. It's like anything else. It's much easier to learn the right way from the beginning than to have to unlearn all the kind of bad habits you've picked up along the way.
Right. Yeah. Clean slate. Yeah. That makes sense. So we've talked about the goal, maximum results in minimal time. We've talked about some of the common pitfalls. Let's dive into the specifics. What are the core elements of a MaxOT workout?
So this is where it gets really interesting, because they lay it all out very clearly. It's almost like a blueprint.
Okay.
You're looking at 4-6 reps per set, 6-9 heavy sets per muscle group,
Okay.
2-3 minutes rest between sets.
Yeah.
Workouts are capped at 30-40 minutes, and you're only training each muscle group once every 5-7 days.
Oh, wow.
So those are the core number that kind of define MaxOT.
Okay, but why those numbers? What's the reasoning behind that? How does that actually force muscle growth?
Well, the idea, and this is what they stress over and over again, is that your muscles only grow when they are forced to adapt. And the way you force them is by overloading them.
Okay.
Lifting heavy weight. And that's what MaxOT is designed to do. It's designed to create that overload every single workout.
Yeah.
So you're constantly pushing your muscles beyond their comfort zone. So they have no choice but to get bigger and stronger in response. And they actually give some pretty specific reasons for these numbers, like that 30-40 minute workout window that might seem pretty short to some people.
Yeah.
But they explain That's because you want to keep your body in that sweet spot
Okay.
for optimal hormonal response. So you're maximizing the anabolic hormones
Okay.
that are released during training, and you're minimizing any catabolic hormones,
Yeah.
which can actually break down muscle tissue.
Okay.
So it's really about maximizing muscle building and minimizing muscle breakdown.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So efficiency seems to be a big theme here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that whole thing about only training 1 or 2 muscle groups per workout, that seems to be a part of that.
Right, exactly. So the idea is that by really focusing your energy on just 1 or 2 muscle groups at a time, you can ensure you're giving them maximum stimulation within that optimal time frame.
Yeah.
So you're getting that overload in. And you're not spending too much time in the gym.
Yeah. Get in, get out, get it done.
Yeah, get in, get out, recover. That's the key.
Oh, recover. That's the other thing that's a big deal here.
Yeah.
That 2-3 minute rest between sets. I know some people are like, oh, I got to keep moving. I got to keep my heart rate up. But here they're saying, no, take a little break.
Yeah, that rest is crucial.
Why?
It's about recovery. Your body needs that time to replenish its energy stores. Clear out any lactate that's built up so that you can hit the next set with just as much intensity.
Yeah.
And that's the key. You want to be able to lift the heaviest possible weight for each set.
Yeah.
And to do that, you need to be fully recovered.
Okay. So we've got intense workouts, relatively short, heavy weight, longer rest. Makes sense. So we create that overload, but they also talk a lot about what happens outside the gym, the recovery.
Yeah,
here.
recovery is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
They actually go so far as to say it's just as important as the training itself.
Wow.
Maybe even more important.
Interesting. Okay. Why is recovery given so much emphasis in Max OT?
Because that's when the real muscle growth happens.
Okay.
You see, a lot of people think they're building muscle in the gym when they're lifting weights. But actually, what's happening in the gym is you're breaking down muscle tissue.
Okay.
You're creating those micro tears. And then it's during the recovery process, when your body repairs that damage, that's when the muscle fibers actually grow bigger and stronger.
Oh, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, that's when the magic happens. When you're resting,
Okay.
sleeping, eating right, that's when your muscles are actually rebuilding and growing.
So what happens if you don't prioritize recovery? Like, what are the downsides?
Well, they lay out pretty clearly. You're not going to see the gains you want. You might actually start losing muscle. You're more prone to injury. You'll probably feel tired all the time. You might even lose motivation to train. It can really set you back.
Yeah, it can mess up your whole rhythm. Okay, so core principles.
Yeah.
Huge emphasis on recovery. But they also spend quite a bit of time debunking some common training myths.
Yeah, they do.
Right, like pyramid training, for example. They kind of call it out as being inefficient.
Yeah, they're not big fans of pyramid training.
Yeah.
Which is, starting with lighter weight, higher reps, then gradually increasing the weight and decreasing the reps as you go.
Yeah.
And then kind of reversing it back down.
Yeah.
So their issue with this is that you're not spending enough time at your maximum overload weight.
Okay.
Remember we talked about how muscle growth happens when you push those muscles to their limits?
Yeah.
Well, with pyramid training, you're spending too much time lifting weights that are too light.
Okay.
You're not really challenging your muscles enough to stimulate growth.
Got it. Okay. And they also talk about how warming up on exercises that are similar to your main working sets is often unnecessary.
Right. It kind of goes back to efficiency. They say if you're going to be doing heavy squats, for example, you don't need to do a bunch of leg presses beforehand as a warm-up.
Yeah.
Because you're already activating those same muscles during your squat warm-up. So why waste energy on something that's not going to directly contribute to muscle growth?
Got it.
It's about being smart.
Yeah.
With your training.
Okay, so no extra warm-ups, but they do talk about something called weight acclimation sets.
Yes.
So what's the difference?
That's an important distinction.
Yeah.
So weight acclimation sets are basically the lighter sets you do to prepare your body for the heavy working sets.
Okay.
So you're gradually increasing the weight to get your muscles, tendons, joints, ligaments ready for that heavy load.
Okay.
You're getting blood flowing, improving range of motion. But the key is that these acclimation sets are not meant to build muscle directly.
Okay.
They're purely preparatory
Yeah.
for those heavy sets that are going to stimulate the most growth.
Oh, okay. So like get the blood flowing, but not actually doing the work.
Yeah. It's like getting your car warmed up before you hit the highway.
I like it.
You know you're not going to get where you're going by just idling in the driveway.
Right. You're not going to get there. Okay, I like it. What about feeling the burn?
Oh, the burn.
A lot of people think, oh, if I'm not feeling the burn, I didn't work hard enough.
Right.
But these guys, they're saying no.
Well, they actually say the burn is not a reliable indicator of an effective muscle building workout.
Wow.
And it can actually be counterproductive.
Okay.
You see, that burn you feel is mainly from lactic acid buildup, which happens during higher rep sets.
Yeah.
And what happens is the lactic acid can actually interfere with muscle growth
Okay.
and slow down your recovery. So it's not that you should never feel the burn,
Yeah.
but it shouldn't be your primary goal.
Got it. Okay. What about the pump?
The pump.
People love the pump.
Yeah, the pump is a good feeling. It can be a good indicator that you're working the muscles,
Yeah.
but it's not the be-all, end-all. You see, you can get a pump from doing lighter weight, higher reps.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean you're stimulating muscle growth. It's more about how much weight you're lifting
Yeah.
and how close you're pushing your muscles to failure.
Got it. Okay, so pump, good feeling, but not necessarily a sign of progress.
Exactly. It's a nice bonus,
Yeah.
but it's not the main goal.
Got it. Okay. Last one. They're not big fans of burnout sets at the end of an exercise.
No, they're not.
What's the reasoning there?
Because those burnout sets, where you're doing as many reps as possible with a lighter weight,
Yeah.
at the end of a set, they don't really align with the principles of max OT. You know, that heavy overload, low rep range. That's what stimulates muscle growth.
Okay.
And burnout sets are more about muscular endurance.
Got it. Okay. So we've kind of busted some of those myths, cleared the air a little bit, but there's this other concept that they introduce. It's called synergistic intensity.
Right.
So what does that mean?
So synergistic intensity, it's like when everything comes together.
Okay.
You know, it's those workouts where the weights feel lighter than usual. Your focus is razor sharp. Your muscles are engorged with blood. It's like your mind and body are working perfectly in sync.
Yeah. You're in the zone.
Yeah, you're in the zone. You're in the flow. And those are the workouts that really lead to some serious muscle growth.
Okay.
And what's cool is that the MXOT structure, with the heavy weights, the sufficient rest, it's designed to help you reach that state of synergistic intensity more consistently.
Okay. So it sets you up for success.
Exactly. But it's not just about the physical aspect.
Yeah.
There's a huge mental component, too.
Right.
You have to have that internal drive, that willingness to push yourself beyond your limits, to make sacrifices, and to really develop that mind-muscle connection.
Yeah.
So it's about training your mind as well as your body.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, we know the author of this material has a background in sports supplementation research. So how does supplementation fit into the whole max OT picture, especially when we're talking about achieving this synergistic intensity?
Yeah, so they talk a bit about that. And they mention a few specific products, like Dimetadrine Extreme, for example, which they say is designed to increase epinephrine and norepinephrine levels, which are hormones that can boost your energy and focus and help you lift heavier weights.
Okay.
And that increased strength is key for achieving that overload we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But they also mentioned that Dimetadrine Extreme has other benefits too, like increasing thermogenesis, which can help with fat burning,
Okay.
and nutrient partitioning, so directing nutrients towards muscle tissue instead of fat storage.
Interesting.
And they even suggest it might help enhance your anabolic response. So overall, it's a pretty powerful supplement.
Okay.
But they do say it's not strictly necessary for max OT, but it can definitely enhance your results.
Makes sense. And they also have this kind of interesting suggestion about doing a post-workout reflection.
Yeah, I like that.
It's not something you hear a lot about.
No, not really.
What's the thinking behind that?
So the idea is to just take 10 minutes after your workout to really reflect on how it went.
Okay.
Did you stay focused?
Yeah.
Did you execute the exercises properly? Were there any areas where you could improve? It's all about accountability
Okay.
and making sure you're getting the most out of every session.
So it's like a debrief almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So now to get into some actual exercises, the material lays out examples for different muscle groups. So let's start with hamstrings. What's the go-to exercise there?
So for hamstrings, they recommend stiff leg deadlifts.
Okay.
And they emphasize keeping your legs straight
Mm-hmm.
without locking your knees, lowering the weight slowly,
Yeah.
keeping your back straight, and not fully straightening your back at the top
Okay.
to maintain constant tension
Mm-hmm.
on the hamstrings.
Got it. Okay. What about chest?
So for chest, they suggest a combination of incline bench press,
Okay.
both with dumbbells and a barbell,
Mm-hmm.
decline bench press, weighted cable crunches,
Mm.
and incline crunches with weight. And for the presses, the key is to lower the weight slowly and then lift it explosively.
Okay.
And for the incline dumbbell press specifically,
Yeah.
they recommend starting with your palms facing each other at the bottom and then rotating them forward as you press up
Okay.
to really get a good stretch and contraction in the pecs.
Got it.
Back contrast.
Here's contraps. Yeah.
This is where it gets fun.
Okay.
So they suggest bent over rows, done on a bench to allow for a full stretch, pulling the weight towards your lower rib cage, keeping your elbows close to your body,
Okay.
close grip, pull downs, using a V-bar, pulling it down to below your sternum, leaning back slightly, pull-ups,
Yeah.
shoulder width grip,
Okay.
cable rows, deadlifts, done with a powerlifting focus, and barbell shrugs. Just straight up and down, no rolling.
Okay. I like it. What about shoulders and triceps?
Shoulders and triceps. We've got dumbbell press, starting with your palms facing in at the bottom, rotating them forward as you press up. Straight bar military press from the front, dumbbell side laterals,
Okay.
lying triceps press using a curl bar, lowering it behind your head, triceps cable press downs, leaning in slightly, getting good stretch,
Okay.
and seated overhead triceps press with a dumbbell.
Okay. Lots of good stuff there.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff. And finally, abs.
Abs.
Yeah.
Weighted cable crunches. They say use a heavy enough weight to really challenge you
Yeah.
and focus on isolating the abs.
Yeah. Really squeezing.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. So real emphasis on compound movements, heavy weight, 4 to 6 rep range, specific attention to form. But we can't forget about the other side of the equation, nutrition. They talk about that a lot.
Oh, yeah. Nutrition
Yeah.
is huge. They basically say that nutrition plus supplementation equals 100% of your muscle growth. And they break it down into 5 key elements: calories, protein, carbs, fats, and water.
Oh, okay.
So let's start with protein, which is obviously a big
Yeah.
one.
What's the deal with protein here? What are the key takeaways?
Well, protein is crucial for muscle growth. You need it to repair the muscle tissue
Yeah.
after those intense workouts and to build new muscle. But it also plays a role in various signaling pathways that control muscle growth and help prevent muscle breakdown.
Interesting.
And they stress the importance of having a consistent supply of protein throughout the day, ideally every 3 hours or so.
Wow.
And they talk about the different types of protein, whole food sources like chicken, fish, eggs, and protein supplements.
Yeah.
They even get into the author's own background in whey protein research. And they really advocate for choosing quality over price
Right.
when it comes to supplements.
Yeah, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And they give pretty specific recommendations on how much protein people should be eating.
They do. They say at least 53% of your total daily calories should come from protein.
Wow. That's a lot.
It is. But remember, we're talking about maximizing muscle growth here.
Yeah, that's true.
And they give examples based on different calorie targets. So you can see exactly how much protein you need
Yeah.
based on your individual needs.
Makes sense. What about carbs and fats? How do they fit into this whole thing?
So carbs are seen as the primary energy source
Okay.
for your workouts
Yeah.
and for replenishing your glycogen stores, which are basically your muscle's fuel tanks.
Okay.
But they do caution against eating too many carbs because the excess can be stored as fat.
Yeah.
So they recommend around 37% of your total daily calories from carbs.
Okay. And what about fats?
Fats are important too.
Okay.
They play a vital role in hormone production, cell function, and even muscle growth.
Okay.
But like carbs, you don't want to go overboard
Right.
because they are calorie dense. So they would recommend about 10% of your total daily calories from fats.
Got it. Makes sense. And of course, we can't forget about water.
Water is crucial.
Yeah.
Absolutely essential.
What does it do? Why is it so important?
It transports nutrients, helps with absorption, removes waste products, regulates body temperature, even helps prevent injuries.
Wow.
So they recommend drinking at least a gallon of pure water per day.
A gallon. Wow. That's a lot of water.
It is. But if you're training hard and eating right,
Yeah.
you need to stay hydrated.
That's true. That's true. Okay, so how do people figure out their individual calorie and macro needs? Like, do they have a formula or something?
Yeah, they actually give a pretty simple formula for calculating your basal metabolic rate,
Okay.
or BMR, which is the number of calories your body burns at rest. So the basic formula is your body weight in pounds times 0.42 times 24.
Okay.
And then if you're moderately active and you're trying to build muscle, they recommend using a multiplier of 0.65 instead of 0.42.
Okay.
So it would be your body weight times 0.65 times 24. And that gives you your total daily calorie needs.
Got it. Okay. And then they use the percentages we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
To figure out the protein, carbs, and fats.
Yeah. Yep. So 53% of your total calories from protein, 37% from carbs, 10% from fats.
Okay. I think people can figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah. They give a sample calculation for a 200-pound individual.
Oh, perfect.
Just to make it super clear.
Yeah, easy. And then the last big thing they talk about is the supplement industry.
Yeah.
And they kind of have they don't seem too happy with the state of the supplement industry.
Yeah, they're pretty critical.
Yeah. Can you kind of break down what their issues are?
Well, for one, they think there's a lot of hype,
Yeah.
a lot of misleading advertising,
Right.
and they specifically call out some fitness magazines for basically being promotional catalogs
Right.
for the supplement companies that advertise in them.
Yeah, it's a money game,
Yeah.
I guess.
And another big concern is product quality.
Mm-hmm.
They say a lot of supplements don't actually contain what they claim to on the label.
Oh, wow.
And they even mention some examples of whey protein powders that were tested and found to have significantly less protein than they advertised.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking.
So it's kind of like a buyer beware situation.
Yeah, definitely.
You really have to be careful.
And they talk about how hard it is for the average person to actually verify the content of a supplement
Right.
without access to a lab. So you really have to trust the company you're buying from.
Yeah, and that's tough
It is.
because there are so many companies out there.
Yeah. And the supplement industry has grown so much
Yeah.
that it's kind of allowed a lot of these less scrupulous companies to pop up
Yeah.
who are just trying to make a quick buck.
Okay. So with all that in mind, what supplements do they recommend?
So they do recommend a few,
Mm.
but they stress that supplements are not essential for getting results with AXOT.
Okay.
They're more like an extra boost.
Mm-hmm.
And they say AST, which is the company the author was involved with,
Mm-hmm.
only develops and markets supplements that actually work.
Okay.
They're not chasing fads. They're all about science-backed products.
Okay. I like it. So what are some of the specific recommendations?
So for protein, they recommend whey protein.
Mm-hmm.
They specifically mention VioPro oligopeptide whey protein and the VP2 oligopeptide whey isolate.
Cool.
For amino acids, they're not really that into them.
Okay.
They say most multi-spectrum amino acids are just compressed protein.
Mm.
And there's not enough evidence to support the use of most free-form amino acids.
Okay.
They also don't recommend HMB
Mm-hmm.
based on the research.
Okay.
But they do like BCAAs.
Yeah, those are popular.
Yeah. They say it's best to get them from whey protein, though,
Okay.
for better absorption.
Yeah, and probably cheaper too.
Right.
Okay. What about creatine?
Creatine is a must-use.
Yeah, okay.
They recommend creatine HSC or micronized creatine,
Yeah.
which has better absorption.
Okay.
They also recommend meal replacement supplements
Mm-hmm.
like Nitro PRO40,
Yeah.
which is a good option if you're on the go and need a quick and easy meal.
Makes sense.
They also recommend ALA,
ALA, yeah.
which is alpha-lipoic acid,
Mm-hmm.
but only in capsule form
Okay.
because it's not stable in powder form.
Interesting.
Yeah, it can degrade pretty quickly.
Oh, wow.
And then they get into some of the hormonal supplements
Okay.
like androstenedione,
Mm-hmm.
which they recommend for boosting testosterone.
Okay.
But they do caution that it's not suitable for everyone.
Yeah.
They recommend checking their website
Mm-hmm.
for more details on that.
Yeah, and they've got all the details and the science and all that on
Right.
there. So, yeah.
They also recommend Dimethadrine Extreme.
Yeah, we talked about that one earlier.
That's the one for intensity
Uh-huh.
and fat burning.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's 3-Andro Extreme,
Mm-hmm.
which combines Dimethadrine Extreme with some testosterone boosting compounds.
Okay. Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
What else?
DHEA is another one
Okay.
for increasing testosterone and IGF.